tell them check out the blog, bro. YouTube channel called MKO. It's pugilism, boxing algorithm. M stand for Marvin and Kevin's initials KO. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the MKO Pugilism Boxing channel, talking all things boxing. Remember to like, remember to subscribe to this channel. Definitely hit the notification bell, and yeah, comment below on the video. Yeah, so this one I'm going to speak to you about basically Anthony Yarde versus Lyndon King Arthur. The recap of that fight just happened on Saturday, just gone. So yeah, just going to go through a few points about it, give you my opinion on the fight and what took place in that ring. So yeah, overall we can say that this was definitely sort of an uneventful fight. Not many punches were thrown. There wasn't really any thrills and there wasn't really any excitement in this fight at all. And the funny thing is, a few fights ago, about one fight back, Anthony Yarde was quite critical of Lyndon Arthur for not stopping Dex Spellman. He then went on to stop Dex Spellman himself, and he was quite critical of Lyndon Arthur for not being exciting. And he was saying that before this fight he was going to bring excitement to the table, and he was he's the type of guy that he brings action, he brings entertainment. So he was kind of saying he's going to bring the action. So anyway, the opening rounds of this fight, they were very cagey. The jab of Lyndon Arthur was the key and sort of the most significant punch that landed in the opening rounds of this fight. There wasn't really much else apart from the Arthur jab that was sort of landing. What Arthur done early doors was he'd done a great job of sort of controlling the range, controlling the distance, keeping the pace quite slow. The pace of the fight was quite slow, with Yarde sort of waiting around a lot. The pace early on, certainly throughout the fight, really, the pace really suited Lyndon Arthur. Arthur was boxing on the back foot. He was fighting his normal fight, behind the jab, and not much more than a jab, really. And definitely the pace and the range at which the fight was being fought, sort of long and mid-range, definitely suited Lyndon Arthur. So that was positive point for him. Anthony Yarde, for the most part of this fight, he was mainly just sort of following Lyndon Arthur around. A problem with Yarde in this fight was that he wasn't cutting the ring off. He didn't let his hands go. I know he's a bit of a counter puncher, so he likes to look for the perfect shot, but that perfect shot didn't come in this fight. So he was just basically just following Arthur around and what they call pressing the action. But the thing was, he wasn't letting his hands go. He was through hardly anything. It was maximum of sort of ones and twos with Anthony Yarde, and even those ones and twos, they were very few and far between. He hardly sort of threw anything, and as I say, with a guy that fights on the back foot, you've got to do more than just follow them around. You've got to step to the left or right depending on their stance, and you've got to sort of cut the ring off and then do your work. But in Yarde's case, he didn't do that. It was basically just, he was coming forward, but all he seemed to be doing is follow Lyndon Arthur around. He wasn't actually cutting the ring off, so that allowed Arthur to sort of fight the fight at his own pace, and at his own, and to be basically comfortable on the back foot, because that's how he normally boxes. And with Yarde just following him, coming forward, but just following him around, it worked in Lyndon Arthur's favor. And as the fight progressed, second half of the fight, Yarde began to sort of, have his way slightly more, not much more. He didn't begin to really get all that active, but he landed a few decent right hands. But definitely in my view, again, there wasn't really any. The problem with Yarde's work again was there wasn't really any urgency in his boxing. And there wasn't really any urgency in his corner, sort of from the halfway stage. And I think personally that in boxing, it doesn't matter how much you believe in yourself and your corner believes in you. You know, you've got to make it clear that you're winning the fight. Even if you believe you're winning the fight, you've got to make it clear. You've got to have that bit of urgency. And in a fight like this, where not much was being thrown, you know, just a few jabs here and there, you know, you got to sort of step it up at some point. But in Yarde's corner with Tunde Ajayi and that, you know, they were very confident as usual, and, you know, talking themselves up. Yep, we're gonna, you know, we're ahead. They'll say, you know, Tunde was claiming that Lyndon Arthur was scared, he was terrified of Yarde and all this sort of thing. But I think what was missing there was no sort of urgency to tell Yarde, right, let's step on the gas now, let's step it up, let's let your hands go. There wasn't any of that in the corner, no urgency at all. And there wasn't urgency at all in Yarde's boxing. And I think for me personally, this is what sort of cost him most of the rounds, is that there was no urgency in what he was doing, and there was no real urgency in what he was being sort of told in the corner. You know, in summary, you know, neither man really did much in this fight. But I think one could argue that Lyndon Arthur's left jab was the sort of main thing, the constant in this fight was sort of the jab of Lyndon Arthur. And I think this is what won him most of the rounds. You know, to some extent it was not exactly the same, but a similar thing in that the jab was winning the fight, like, you know, the last time with Joe Joyce and Daniel Dubois, where that jab was just a key weapon that was just constantly there. It was constantly there in Yarde's face all the time. But unlike Daniel Dubois, Yarde didn't rattle off any combinations himself, you know, so he was, again, he let himself down in that respect, that, you know, like with Dubois and Joyce, yeah, the Joyce jab was a great weapon, but Dubois would at least let his hands go, throw body shots, head shots, throw a variation of shots, so he's still in it, you know, he's still you know, showing you that, right, I'm there, this guy's not, you know, winning. But in Yarde's case, yeah, he was coming forward, but he was just getting hit with the jab, you know, the little punches that landed, but then he wasn't letting his hands go, and there wasn't hardly any activity from him. And you know, prior to the fight, myself, we picked Anthony Yarde to win this fight, as I was sure that, you know, he would have learnt from the Kovalev loss and, you know, sort of come back better. You know, I thought he would have boxed with that urgency, with a bit of spite. I've seen him close the show in other fights. I've seen him, you know, take people out, and I knew that of these two guys, he's the puncher, and, you know, he'd have to just sort of let his hands go and you know, fight and step up the pace and sort of raise the tempo at some point. You know, but it seemed to me that you know, going by the body language and everything from the corner and from himself and from how he performed, the sad thing here is that Yarde seemed to think and seemed to believe that he was doing a lot more than what he actually was doing. And I think that's always a bit of a worry in boxing, because you never want to be in that position to where you think, oh yeah, I'm winning here, I'm winning easy, yeah, I'm pressing the action and blah blah blah, you know, when in actual fact the opposite is true. And you know, what he needed to do was, no, you're not winning, you're not doing what you think you're doing, you need to step it up and make sure, you know, that you're actually winning this fight. But they were so, you know, content to just say, okay, yeah, and Arthur's scared of us, and, you know, he was content to not do very much in this fight. I mean, you know, and for me, the biggest problem with Yarde's performance was that, you know, he could have done a lot more than what he did. You know, he could have done possibly a lot more than what he did in this fight. You know, but again, I'll highlight it, the point again. Yarde and the corner, the team, were content to just do what they considered to be enough to win this fight. And that's always, for me, that's a dangerous thing. When a fight's close, you can't be content to just do enough, to just do what you guys think is enough. You got to step it up, and you got to make sure of it. You know, there's guys who have been able to get away with just sort of doing enough. Like, everyone would bring up the example of Floyd Mayweather, who, yeah, he, in his fights, he did do a lot of the time just enough, and he'd throw just one punch at a time. But guess what? When Floyd Mayweather did it, he would make sure that you couldn't hit him. So he'd land his one solid right hand every few minutes or whatever, and then he'd make sure that you couldn't land your stuff. And he'd hit you with the right hand, and then he'd dive in and he'd hold you so you couldn't hit him. So he would make sure that, yeah, I'm not doing very much, I'm doing just enough to win, but then you're not going to be able to hit me. But with Yarde, he was constantly getting caught with a jab all the time, and these little shots and the occasional right hand. So they believed they were doing enough, what they considered to be doing enough, but obviously it wasn't enough. Obviously it wasn't, and that was the problem there, that, you know, they kind of believed their own hype, that, yeah, we're doing enough, yeah, we're the better one, we're above this domestic level, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, you still got to let your hands go. You still got to throw punches. And, you know, to me, this was the key point in, you know, what was wrong with the whole performance, is that, you know, they said, oh, you know, we're doing enough pressing the fight, but you're pressing the fight, but then you're not throwing punches. You're not throwing and landing enough punches to really justify that you're winning the fight. I mean, I had it quite close by the end of it. You know, I thought it was quite close. I thought even it might have been one of them things where, you know, they might have give it to Yarde for aggression or whatever. But then in the grand scheme of it, you've got to look at it and think about, well, what actually landed. And probably the majority of punches in this fight were landed by Arthur. Yeah, they might have mostly been jabs, but he probably landed the majority of the punches, because Yarde didn't work. He didn't do hardly anything. And I think that's the sad thing about this fight, is that Yarde had the capability to maybe even stop Lyndon Arthur, but they were so believing his own hype and believing so much he's going to win the fight, that he wasn't doing what it takes to win. And the key factor in this fight is that, you know, for us to consider, is that Arthur, he boxed in his usual manner, behind the jab, on the back foot, using his height, using his reach, but Yarde, you know, failed to do what he needed to do, which was to get inside Lyndon Arthur's long reach and work away to the body, to the head. His job for Yarde in this fight was to get inside and rough up the sort of taller man, the man with the height and reach. But he failed to make those adjustments. He failed to get inside, and he failed to you know, do enough work in this fight. And that was the key thing. He needed to make adjustments to get in, to, you know, jab his way in, get in, and then make it his type of fight, make it more of a brawl than a boxing match. But he failed to do that, whereas Lyndon Arthur boxed on his back foot, boxed his usual fight behind the jab, you know, sort of threw more and landed more. The majority of it was jabs, but that's the reality of the fight, ladies and gents, really, that, you know, Arthur, he done what was necessary. He boxed his normal fight, he had his way, and Anthony Yarde didn't make the adjustments, didn't get inside, and didn't let his hands go enough to really justify what they were saying after the fight about, oh, it was a robbery. It wasn't a robbery at all. It was just a fact that you didn't do what was necessary. You know, I thought he was capable of winning this fight. I knew he had the power and everything, and the strength to win this fight. But again, if you don't do anything, if you don't throw enough punches, if you don't get inside and do what you need to do, then of course, you know, you're not going to win the fight. You know, he had the opportunity there to change the outcome, to do, you know, what it took, but, you know, he decided not to do enough and then complain about the outcome after, which is no good. But anyway, that's just my thoughts on the fight. They'll probably have a rematch, and, you know, Yarde, I reckon, probably will have learned his lesson from this fight, and hopefully he'll come back stronger. But anyway, hats off to Lyndon Arthur as well. He fought a decent fight, you know, more or less one-handed. So yeah, respect to Lyndon Arthur. Well done to him for winning the fight. And until next time, it's MKO Pugilism over and out. Catch you on the next one.